What if the person who shared your last name, your home, and your memories turned out to be the one who wanted you dead, just to collect a payout? I never thought my own son would try to kill me. That's not something a father expects, no matter how strained the relationship. But looking back, maybe I should have seen it coming. My name is Sam Whitaker. I'm 68, a retired marine mechanic, and for the past 4 years, a widower. Life in Rockmere, California suits me just fine. Quiet, predictable, peaceful. Every morning, I walk 3 miles along the coastal path before the tourists wake up. I read the Rockmere Tribune front to back with my coffee, tend to my garden where Emily's roses still bloom, and every Thursday, I host poker night with the guys from the VFW. Emily stares at me from her silver frame on the mantel. Cancer took her. Lymphoma. The doctors gave her 6 months. She fought for 18. Her last words still echo in my head on the bad days. Never give up, Sam. There's always something worth saving. I've tried to live by those words, especially with Brandon. My son's always been complicated, brilliant, but reckless. At 36, he should have been set for life with that VP position at the tech startup in San Delfina. Instead, he gambled it all away. The job, his marriage, his kids' college fund. Those grandkids are my world. Maddie and little Thomas don't know I've been quietly covering their school expenses since the divorce. Some things a grandfather does without needing credit. That July afternoon, when Brandon showed up unannounced, I knew something was wrong. His tailored shirt was soaked through with sweat despite the air-conditioned Lexus he stepped out of. "Dad," he said, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "We need to talk about finances." I made iced tea. We sat at the dining table where he'd done homework as a boy. The conversation started civil enough. How was I doing? Was the house too much to maintain? Had I thought about my future? Then it turned. "I need money," he said flatly, "and access to your life insurance policy." I nearly choked on my tea. "Brandon, you know you're the beneficiary. When I'm gone, I'm done waiting for you to die." He slammed a briefcase onto the table, rattling Emily's china. "I need it now." I stood my ground. "Son, you'll inherit everything in time. Not by force." His face contorted into something I didn't recognize. He kicked over a chair, then swept his arm across the sideboard. Family photos crashed to the floor. Emily's picture, the one from our 35th anniversary, shattered at my feet. "You always chose her over me," he spat. "Her or your precious principles." "That's not true." My voice stayed steady even as my hands shook. "The rehab stays I paid for, the loans I forgave, the job connections I made. You destroyed every hand I extended." Brandon's eyes narrowed. He grabbed his briefcase. And just before storming out, he turned back. "You'll wish you had just given me the money." The front door slammed so hard, the windows rattled. Through the curtains, I watched him stride toward his car, then detour to my garage. When he left, he was carrying something. I couldn't tell what. 5 days passed without a word. I checked my phone constantly, rereading our last text exchange, wondering where I'd gone wrong as a father. Then he called. His voice was different, softer, like when he was a teenager coming to apologize after breaking curfew. "Dad, I'm sorry. I was stressed. I don't want things to end this way between us." Relief washed over me, though caution kept it at bay. "Remember when we'd fish at Crystal Bay every summer?" he continued. "I want to do that again. One last trip together." I hesitated. Brandon pressed on. "I found a charter spot. No captain, just us like the old days." Then he added, "Mom would want us to patch things up." Emily's name from his lips broke my resistance. "Okay," I said. "When?" After hanging up, I opened Emily's old tackle box. Inside was our lucky fishing hat with the stitched-on GPS tracker she'd added years ago when I'd gotten lost at sea. A safety precaution. I slipped it into my pocket. The morning of our trip, Brandon arrived at 6:45, sharp, truck already running, smile too wide. As we drove to Westwind Marina, I noticed him tapping the wheel repeatedly, a nervous tic he'd had since childhood whenever he lied. The boat waiting for us was an 18-foot Sea Ray Outrage, sleek, modern, nothing like the humble crafts we'd used for family trips. "Not many boats out today," Brandon commented as we pushed off from the dock. "Must be fate." As the marina faded behind us, and nothing but horizon surrounded us, I quietly slipped the GPS tracker from my hat into the lining of my windbreaker. Brandon hadn't noticed, yet. They say memory is what keeps people alive, but instincts are what keep them from dying. I watched the GPS display tick upward as we cut through the waves, 10.6 miles from shore, 11.8, 13.2. We were far beyond any casual fishing spot. The coastline had disappeared, leaving nothing but endless blue in every direction. My mouth went dry. "Aren't we going a bit far out?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. "Crystal Bay's only 7 miles offshore." Brandon barely glanced up from the wheel. "Just ahead, canyon drop-off. That's where the big ones are." I nodded like this made perfect sense, but my eyes scanned the boat. The radio was switched off. The bright orange flare kit that should have been mounted on the console was missing. Life jackets were zipped into a locker, locked from Brandon's side. My son had planned this meticulously. "Want some coffee?" I asked, reaching for my thermos. "Already poured you some." Brandon nodded to a mug in the cup holder. I lifted it to my lips, but didn't drink. Something smelled off, medicinal, sharp, beneath the coffee aroma. I pretended to sip, then set it down when Brandon turned away. The engine suddenly cut out. Silence crashed around us, broken only by water slapping against fiberglass. We drifted, rocking gently on the swells. "Stand at the bow, Dad," Brandon suggested. "You'll get better casting distance there." I moved slowly, pretending to comply while keeping him in my peripheral vision. "Remember that 20-pound yellowtail I caught when you were 13? I asked, stalling. "You were so jealous you wouldn't speak to me the whole ride back." "Always reminiscing," Brandon interrupted. His voice had changed, calm but cold as the water beneath us. "We've always done things your way. Time to do it mine." I saw it coming a split second before it happened. His weight shifting, muscles tensing. He lunged forward, both hands connecting with my chest, shoving hard. I went backward over the railing, Emily's name on my lips as I hit the water. The Pacific in July is still cold enough to steal your breath. I surfaced gasping, salt burning my eyes and throat. Waves slammed against me as I treaded water. "Brandon," I called out. "Help!" He walked to the railing, arms crossed, looking down at me as I struggled to stay afloat. The son I'd raised, the boy I'd taught to swim in this very ocean, watched me fight for my life with detached curiosity. "I didn't want to make it messy," he said calmly, "but you forced me." The engine roared back to life. "If you make it back, well, I'll deny everything, but you won't." I watched, disbelieving, as the boat began turning back toward the coast, toward home, toward life. "Brandon," I shouted again, but my voice was swallowed by the vastness around me. The floating bait bucket bobbed nearby. He'd forgotten to secure it before pushing off. I swam to it, clutching it like a lifeline. It wasn't much, but it would help me stay above water. 68 years old, 13 miles from shore, no life vest, water temperature near 60 degrees. The odds scrolled through my mind like a grim calculator. Fatigue would set in within an hour, hypothermia not long after. I needed to think clearly. Emily's voice came to me. "Always be calm in the storm." I removed my heavy jacket. It was dragging me down, but kept the windbreaker with the GPS tracker. The weight of my waterlogged boots threatened to pull me under. I kicked them off, watching them disappear into the darkness below. A shadow moved beneath me, large, fast. My heart slammed against my ribs until I realized it was just a school of tuna passing by. Still, it was a stark reminder. I wasn't alone out here. I began to float on my back, conserving energy, breathing steadily. The sun climbed higher, burning my face even as the cold water numbed my legs. I thought of Emily's battle with cancer, how she'd endured endless rounds of chemo without complaint. If she could face that, I could face this. Time blurred. My lips cracked from salt and sun. Thirst clawed at my throat. I drifted in and out of full awareness, memories washing over me like the waves. Brandon as a toddler, splashing in tide pools. Emily's laugh as we danced at our 40th anniversary. My grandchildren opening Christmas presents last winter. I couldn't die here. Not like this. Not by my son's hand. Then, a sound. At first, I thought I was hallucinating, but it grew louder. The deep rumble of engines, different from Brandon's boat. Larger, more powerful. I rotated slowly in the water and saw it. A massive white yacht cutting through the waves about half a mile away. Its course would take it past me, but not close enough. "Hey," I shouted, waving the bait bucket frantically. Useless. I was too small against the vastness of the ocean. The GPS tracker. I tore it from the lining of my windbreaker with numb fingers. Its chrome casing caught the sunlight as I held it up, angling it to flash a reflection toward the yacht. Please, Emily. One more save. Something changed in the yacht's bearing. It was turning toward me. They'd seen the flash. My heart soared even as my strength ebbed. The yacht slowed as it approached, and a smaller tender boat was lowered. 2 crewmen in crisp uniforms spotted me and steered in my direction. Strong hands grabbed me, pulling me from the ocean's grip. "We've got you, sir," one said. "You're safe now." As they lifted me aboard the tender, I realized I was shaking uncontrollably. Hypothermia had set in despite the summer sun. My rescuers wrapped me in emergency blankets and radioed ahead. Man overboard recovered, hypothermic, conscious but disoriented. The yacht loomed over us, the Orion according to its hull. I was helped aboard and immediately surrounded by concerned faces. A medical officer checked my vitals while someone pressed a warm drink into my hands. "What happened?" a commanding voice asked. "Were you alone out there?" I looked up to see a tall, silver-haired man watching me with sharp eyes. Something about him seemed familiar. "My son," I managed to rasp. He pushed me. 13 miles out. The man's expression darkened. He introduced himself as Senator Cliff Montgomery, then knelt beside me. "You were left for dead," he said quietly. "That's attempted murder, and I don't let things like that slide." As the crew checked my soaked clothing, searching for ID, one crewman pulled something from the lining of my windbreaker, something I hadn't known was there. A small, waterproof device. "Sir," he said, holding it up. "It's a micro-recorder." Senator Montgomery took it, turned it over in his hands. "Your son put this here?" I nodded, confused. He pressed play. Through the static came Brandon's voice, rehearsing what sounded like a suicide note. My suicide note. "I'm tired of life," my son's voice said. "I'm leaving this world on my own terms." The fabricated words of a dead man. My words, written by the son who had tried to murder me. Montgomery's eyes met mine. "He didn't just try to kill you," he said. "He tried to erase you completely." I felt something shift inside me, grief hardening into resolve. Brandon hadn't just betrayed me. He'd tried to steal my final words, my legacy, my truth. "Get me to shore," I said, my voice stronger now. "I have a story to tell." Floating alone in the middle of the Pacific, I wasn't just fighting the ocean. I was battling the fact that my own blood had tried to erase me. Senator Montgomery's yacht became my sanctuary. The medical officer, Dr. Reeves, treated me for hypothermia and dehydration, inserting an IV into my arm as I reclined on a leather couch worth more than my truck. "You're lucky," she said, checking my vitals. "Another hour out there, and we'd be having a different conversation." Lucky wasn't the word I would have chosen. Stubborn, maybe, or perhaps just not ready to give my son the satisfaction. Once I stabilized, Senator Montgomery pulled up a chair beside me. His weathered face spoke of someone who'd seen his share of storms, both literal and political. "Tell me everything," he said, "from the beginning." I did. The financial demands, the threats, the fishing trip invitation that had seemed too good to be true, because it was. With each detail, Montgomery's expression grew darker. "I lost my brother to drowning," he revealed when I finished. "Someone who treats the ocean like a murder weapon." He trailed off, jaw clenched. "That doesn't sit right with me." The senator excused himself, returning minutes later with renewed purpose. "I've contacted Detective Maria Alston of the San Delfina Police Department. She's waiting for us at the harbor. The Coast Guard has been notified as well." A young staffer appeared in the doorway. "Sir, you should see this." He held up my windbreaker, still damp with seawater. From the lining, he extracted the small recording device we'd discovered earlier. "We've analyzed the audio more thoroughly." Montgomery nodded for him to play it. Brandon's voice filled the room again, clearer this time. "I can't go on living like this. The pain is too much." The words paused, then, "No, that sounds fake. Try again. I'm tired of fighting. I want peace." Another pause. "Better. Remember, it needs to sound like Dad." My stomach turned. Brandon hadn't just planned my death. He'd rehearsed how to explain it away, make it look like suicide. "The timestamp," Montgomery noted, pointing to the digital display. "This was recorded 3 days before your trip." "Premeditation," I whispered. "Exactly." The senator's eyes met mine. This wasn't a heat-of-the-moment push. He planned every detail. I thought of the drugged coffee I hadn't drunk, the locked life vest compartment, the missing radio and flares. My son had orchestrated my death with the precision of a military operation. "Why would he record himself rehearsing this?" I asked. "Criminals make mistakes," Montgomery replied. "Even careful ones. He probably wanted to perfect his performance before typing your suicide note. Never thought the device would be found." As the yacht approached the San Delfina harbor, I stood shakily on the upper deck. The coastline looked different from this angle, beautiful and indifferent, like it hadn't just tried to become my grave. "You made it back," Montgomery said, joining me at the railing. "That means you get to choose how this ends." I thought of Emily, of her battle with cancer. She'd fought to her last breath because every moment, even the painful ones, mattered. She'd never given up. "I want justice," I said. The word felt strange in my mouth, sharp and unfamiliar. Not revenge, justice. Montgomery nodded, satisfied. "I know people who make sure stories like this end correctly." A police cruiser waited at the dock, lights flashing silently. Beside it stood a woman in a charcoal pantsuit, Detective Maria Alston, I presumed. As we disembarked, Senator Montgomery's assistant approached with a tablet. "Sir, there's been activity at Brandon Whitaker's residence. He returned home 2 hours ago and ordered expensive whiskey for delivery. According to his credit card, he's hosting what appears to be a celebration." My son was celebrating my death. The reality of it hit me like a physical blow. Detective Alston briefed us quickly. Officers were already positioned around Brandon's property in the upscale Hillcrest neighborhood. They'd intercepted security footage from Westwind Marina showing Brandon returning alone, my absence conspicuously unaddressed. "We have enough for an arrest," she explained. "But given the personal nature of this crime, I understand if you want to be present." "I do," I said without hesitation. Alston frowned. Protocol suggests. Let him go, Montgomery interrupted. A man deserves to look his would-be killer in the eye, especially when it's his own son. 20 minutes later, we pulled into Brandon's neighborhood. Modern homes with manicured lawns lined the street. Through the windows of his 2-story house, I could see the glow of lights and the shadows of people moving inside. My son, who thought I was dead, was throwing a party. Officers are in position, Alston said, checking her radio. Standard procedure would be for us to approach first. But I want to go, I insisted. Alone. After a brief argument, they relented. The plan: I would approach the house first while officers waited out of sight. Let him see the ghost he tried to bury, Montgomery said grimly. I walked slowly up the path to Brandon's front door, each step fueled by the memory of salt water filling my lungs. Music and laughter spilled from inside, the sounds of my son's premature celebration. I pressed the doorbell. Footsteps approached. The door swung open. Brandon stood there, whiskey glass in hand, smile freezing on his face as he registered who stood before him. The glass slipped from his fingers, shattering on the tile. You're supposed to be, he choked. Dead? I finished for him. I was. But you're not good at finishing what you start. He stumbled backward, face draining of color. He looked like he'd seen a ghost, which in his mind he had. Dad, I can explain, he began, then turned to flee inside. But the door wouldn't lock. The police had remotely disabled it. As Brandon frantically tried to secure it, SFPD officers swarmed from both sides of the house. Detective Alston stepped forward, badge in hand. Brandon Whitaker, you're under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy, fraud, and insurance forgery. As they cuffed my son, his eyes never left mine. They held no remorse, only shock and something else. Calculation. Even now, he was trying to figure a way out. Dad, he pleaded. It wasn't what you think. I said nothing. What could I possibly say to the man who had pushed me into the ocean and left me to die? The boy I'd raised. The son I'd loved. Senator Montgomery joined me as the police car pulled away, Brandon's face a pale oval in the back window. You did it, he said quietly. You came back with the storm. I watched the taillights disappear around the corner. No, I replied. I am the storm. As we turned to leave, Montgomery's assistant approached with his phone. Sir, there's something else. We've uncovered emails between Brandon and someone called the Contractor. They date back 2 weeks before the fishing trip. Montgomery took the phone, scanned the contents, then looked at me gravely. This isn't over, Sam. Your son didn't just try to kill you on impulse. He reached out to a professional first. The investigation was about to go deeper than anyone had expected. And I was ready to see just how far my son's betrayal truly went. They thought I was dead. That was their first mistake. Thinking I wouldn't come back. That was their last. The helicopter's blades cut through the night sky as we flew from San Delfina back to Rockmere. Senator Montgomery had insisted on providing transportation. No son of mine would have left you in that ocean, he'd said, though I was old enough to be his father. Riley Lawson, the tactical pilot, navigated with military precision. The helicopter interior glowed with soft blue light as Montgomery spread documents across the table between us. These are the files Detective Alston shared with me, he explained. I have certain security clearances that expedited things. I thumbed through pages detailing my son's life, a stranger's life, really. The Brandon I thought I knew had vanished years ago, replaced by this predator. Look here, Montgomery pointed to financial statements. He's in debt to illegal sports betting operations, over $300,000 to someone named Vin Lasco. Another page showed a failed crypto investment scheme that had cost Brandon his remaining savings. "And this," Montgomery continued, sliding over a document bearing what appeared to be my signature. "Forged. Submitted to your insurance company last week, before the fishing trip. He was changing beneficiary details, adding contingencies that would speed up payout." My hand trembled as I recognized the familiar loops and curves of my handwriting, perfectly mimicked. How long had Brandon been practicing this forgery? "There's more," Montgomery said grimly. "Emails between Brandon and a private wealth advisor discussing how to liquidate your assets, post-mortem." I set the papers down, suddenly exhausted. "I don't understand. He stood to inherit everything anyway." "Why not just wait?" "The debts," Montgomery replied. "These aren't patient people. And look at the timeline. He needed money now, not later. Plus, the insurance payout for accidental death is triple the standard benefit. $3.9 million. That was the price of my life to my son." "This case won't be one with rage," Montgomery said, studying my face. "It'll be one with precision. You ready to be surgical about this?" I thought of Emily again. How methodically she'd faced her cancer treatment, one day at a time, one battle at a time. "Yes," I answered. "Surgical." We landed at a private helipad near Golden Gate Park. Detective Alston was waiting, her unmarked car idling nearby. "We've been monitoring Brandon's activities since his arrest," she informed us as we drove. "He made bail an hour ago. His bookie friend Vin Lasco posted it." "He's free?" I asked, incredulous. "Temporarily," she assured me. "We have officers stationed around his property. He's returned home and ordered expensive whiskey. According to surveillance, he's hosting 2 friends. One is Lasco." "Celebrating again?" I asked bitterly. "Strategizing," Alston corrected. "They don't know how much evidence we have. They're planning their defense." We parked a block from Brandon's house. Through Detective Alston's binoculars, I could see my son moving behind the windows, gesturing animatedly. Even from this distance, he looked untroubled by what he'd done. "I want to confront him," I said suddenly. "Not just in court. Now." Alston shook her head firmly. "That's not standard procedure." "Let him," Montgomery intervened. "Sometimes justice needs a human face." After some negotiation, Alston agreed to a modified plan. I would approach the house first, with officers ready to move in at the first sign of trouble. "Let him see the ghost he tried to bury," Montgomery said, squeezing my shoulder. I walked down the sidewalk toward Brandon's house, each step deliberate. This neighborhood, with its Tesla charging stations and imported olive trees, was where my son had built his life, a life he'd been willing to orphan his own children to maintain. Outdoor speakers played jazz as if this were just another pleasant evening. I reached the end of the stone path and stepped into the pool of light cast by the porch lamp. The front door opened. Brandon, still dressed in his party clothes but with loosened tie, stumbled outside to check on a noise he'd heard. He froze when he saw me standing there. The whiskey glass slipped from his hand, shattering on the concrete. "Twice in one day," I said quietly. "You really should be more careful with your drinkware." "How did you?" he stammered, glancing back into the house as if seeking escape. "Find you? You're not hard to track, son. Neither were your plans." Brandon's eyes darted left and right, calculating. "Listen, Dad, about what happened on the boat. You pushed me overboard 13 miles from shore," I stated flatly. "You left me to drown." "It wasn't like that," he protested weakly. "I was desperate. These guys, they were going to kill me if I didn't pay. So you decided I should die instead." His face contorted with frustration. "You don't understand. I just needed the money," I finished. "The house, the insurance, I know. I've seen the paperwork." Fear flashed across his features. He backed toward the door, but when he tried to close it, the electronic lock wouldn't engage. "What the?" he muttered, pushing harder. "Police override," I explained as blue and red lights suddenly illuminated the street. "They've been watching you since you made bail." SFPD officers swarmed from both sides of the house. Detective Alston stepped forward. "Brandon Whitaker," she announced formally. "New evidence has been discovered. You're under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, forgery, and tampering with evidence." As they handcuffed him again, Brandon's mask of composure crumbled. "Dad, please," he begged. "Don't let them do this. I'm your son." Those words, so familiar yet now so hollow, hung between us. "You stopped being my son," I replied quietly. "The moment you decided I was worth more dead than alive." Police led him to the waiting cruiser. Inside his house, I could see his friends being questioned by officers, their celebration cut short. I walked through Brandon's home while Detective Alston supervised the evidence collection. Photos of Emily and the grandkids sat on his mantel, props in a performance of normalcy. The house itself felt sterile, cold, devoid of any real family warmth. In his office, police found more damning evidence: the original beneficiary paperwork with practiced forgery attempts in the trash, my old typewriter with a half-finished suicide note still loaded in the carriage, and emails titled "Post-Death Financial Plan" in his drafts folder. When I returned outside, Brandon was watching me through the police car window. Our eyes met one final time. "Dad," he called through the glass. "I didn't mean—" "You did," I cut him off. "But I survived. And I will remember that more than anything else." I stood there, unblinking, as the cruiser pulled away. Senator Montgomery joined me at the curb. "You did it," he said. "You came back with the storm." A strange calm settled over me as I watched the taillights disappear around the corner. "No," I replied. "I am the storm." As we turned to leave, Montgomery's assistant hurried toward us, tablet in hand. "Sir," he said urgently, "we've found something else." Brandon reached out to a contract killer 2 weeks before the fishing trip. Montgomery took the tablet, his expression darkening as he scrolled through the emails. "This just got bigger," he said, handing me the device. The emails showed Brandon had contacted someone known only as the cleaner, requesting a permanent solution to a family problem. The response included price quotes and methodology options. He backed out, I realized, reading further. Too expensive. So he decided to do it himself, Montgomery concluded. Save the money. My own son had comparison shopped for my murder. The investigation was growing deeper and darker than anyone had expected. But now, I wasn't just a victim fighting to survive. I was a hunter, determined to bring every aspect of this betrayal into the light. They called it an attempted murder. But for me, it was a declaration of war. And now, I was finally ready to return fire. 3 days after Brandon's second arrest, the district attorney's office released a formal statement. I watched the press conference from Senator Montgomery's downtown office, my face expressionless as District Attorney Liana Park listed the charges. Attempted murder in the first degree, conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, forgery, tampering with evidence. The media descended on Brandon's neighborhood like vultures, news vans lining the street outside his now empty house. Yellow crime scene tape fluttered in the coastal breeze, a garish decoration for what had once been my son's showcase of success. I avoided the cameras. My story wasn't for public consumption, at least not yet. Instead, I met privately with D.A. Park, a sharp-eyed woman whose reputation for securing maximum sentences preceded her. "Mr. Whitaker," she said, shaking my hand firmly, "I want you to know we're treating this case with the utmost seriousness." "Will it be enough?" I asked. "He has money, connections." "Had," she corrected. "His assets have been frozen pending investigation. And as for connections," she smiled thinly, "let's just say attempted filicide doesn't win you many friends, even in San Delfina." Senator Montgomery had provided federal resources to secure evidence from Brandon's offshore accounts. What they found confirmed the premeditation. Transfers to shell companies, inquiries about non-extradition countries, and detailed research on inheritance law. My son, I hesitated, the word feeling wrong in my mouth. Will I have to see him in court? You'll need to testify, Park confirmed. But we'll prepare you thoroughly. Your testimony is crucial, the human element that will ensure the jury sees this for what it was. The next morning, I sat in a private meeting with investigators, watching as they unpacked the evidence against Brandon. The micro-recorder audio played again, Brandon's voice rehearsing my fake suicide note. Surveillance footage from West Wind Marina showed us departing together, then Brandon returning alone, calm and unhurried. Most damning was the rental boat's dash cam, which Brandon had attempted to disable, but had only damaged. Through static and wind noise, his voice came through. Now I just wait for the tide to do its job. Then there were the emails to the contract killer, messages Brandon thought were deleted, but had been recovered from server backups. He'd reached out 2 weeks before our fishing trip, inquiring about permanent solutions to financial problems. The negotiations had fallen through over price, but the intent was clear. His search history completed the picture. How long to die in ocean, how to erase GPS data, and changing beneficiaries without signature. My son had researched my death like a school project. Brandon's attorney, Max Broder, was already working to spin the narrative. A sleazy high-fee defense lawyer known for representing wealthy clients regardless of guilt, he'd begun floating a new theory to the press. I had a history of depression following Emily's death, and Brandon had merely intervened in a suicide attempt gone wrong. The suggestion that I would abandon my grandchildren, that I would break my promise to Emily to keep living, infuriated me more than the murder attempt itself. Senator Montgomery called in Dr. Naomi Wexler, a renowned forensic psychiatrist, to evaluate my mental state. Her conclusion was unequivocal: no signs of depression or suicidal ideation, just the normal grief of widowhood processed in healthy ways. The case strengthened further when investigators discovered a recorded phone call between Brandon and his bookie, Vin Lasco, made shortly after returning from our fishing trip. I handled it, Brandon's voice said confidently. The water took care of the old man. Faced with his own potential indictment for conspiracy, Lasco flipped on Brandon, agreeing to testify in exchange for immunity. As the trial date approached, I was prepped for my testimony by the DA's team. Hour after hour, I rehearsed answers to potential questions, steeling myself against defense tactics designed to provoke emotional outbursts. Each night, I returned to the coastal property Senator Montgomery had arranged for me, staring at the same ocean that had nearly become my grave. I practiced my testimony in front of the bathroom mirror, hearing Emily's voice in my head. You don't have to raise your voice to raise the truth. The morning of the trial, I dressed in my Navy suit, the one I'd worn to Emily's funeral. Senator Montgomery personally escorted me to the courthouse, shielding me from the press scrum that had gathered outside. Today, he said quietly as we approached the entrance, you speak for every parent betrayed by their child. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with tension. Brandon sat at the defense table, hair neatly trimmed, wearing a conservative suit that made him look younger, more vulnerable. Our eyes met briefly before he looked away, his expression unreadable. The jury filed in. 8 women, 4 men. Average age about 50. Parents, most likely. People who would understand the sacred trust between a father and son. District Attorney Park presented her opening statement with surgical precision, laying out the timeline of events, the money trail leading to motive, and the overwhelming evidence of premeditation. This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment, she told the jury. This was a calculated attempt to murder a father for financial gain. Mr. Sparks, Whitaker didn't just survive drowning. He survived a betrayal that most of us cannot even imagine. Expert witnesses detailed the insurance fraud strategy Brandon had attempted to implement. Forensic accountants traced his mounting debts and desperate financial maneuvers. The ghost audio of my fake suicide note played in the hushed courtroom, causing several jurors to visibly recoil. When my turn came to testify, I walked to the stand with steady steps, feeling the weight of Emily's wedding ring in my pocket, a talisman I'd carried since her death. Under D.A. Park's questioning, I recounted everything: the fight at my home, Brandon's apology call, the fishing trip invitation, the moment I realized he intended to kill me, and the desperate struggle to survive in the open ocean. "Mr. Whitaker," Park asked finally, "why do you think you survived?" I looked directly at the jury, then at my son. I didn't swim to survive. I swam to testify. I swam so the truth wouldn't die with me. During cross-examination, Broder tried to paint Brandon as desperate, but not murderous, a son who'd made a terrible mistake in a moment of financial panic. "Isn't it possible," he suggested, "that this was just a terrible argument that went too far, a push during a heated moment?" "No," I replied firmly. "He planned it for weeks. He researched how long it would take me to drown. He planted a fake suicide message. He tried to steal my life, then write my goodbye. That's not insanity or impulse. That's cold, deliberate murder." Brandon avoided my eyes throughout my testimony, staring instead at his notepad, occasionally whispering to his attorney. When I stepped down from the witness stand, I felt lighter somehow, as if speaking the truth had lifted a weight I'd been carrying since that day in the water. The defense's final desperate move came when they played recordings of Brandon's prison phone calls with his ex-wife, Lena, selectively edited to suggest remorse. But the prosecution countered with the complete recordings, including damning statements. It was either him or me. The house, the insurance, it was all right there. And most devastating of all, Brandon laughing in the background of one call, celebrating with Vin before I had even been reported missing. As the jury filed out for deliberation, Judge Allison Kerr called for a recess. I stepped into the hallway needing air, space to process what had happened. A young woman stood near the water fountain, 2 children at her side. She looked up as I approached, her expression uncertain. "Mr. Whitaker?" she asked hesitantly. "I'm Lena. These are your grandchildren." I stared at the children, Maddie, now 7, and Thomas, 5, who I'd only seen in photographs for the past 2 years. Their small faces looked up at me with curiosity rather than recognition. "They wanted to meet you," Lena explained softly. "They wanted to know the man who survived. I didn't survive to rebuild what was. I survived to build something better and make sure this storm ends where it should." Time seemed to stop in that courthouse hallway as I looked at my grandchildren. Maddie had Emily's eyes, perceptive, curious. Thomas fidgeted with a small toy boat, avoiding my gaze until Lena gently encouraged him. "Your Grandpa Sam," Maddie said matter-of-factly. "Dad said you were gone." Before I could respond, the bailiff announced the jury had reached a verdict. Just 2 hours of deliberation, never a good sign for the defense. We filed back into the courtroom. Brandon stood stiffly as Judge Allison Kerr prepared to deliver the sentence. His lawyer placed a steadying hand on his arm. "Brandon Whitaker," Judge Kerr began, her voice echoing in the silent courtroom. "This court finds you guilty on all charges." She removed her glasses, fixing Brandon with a hard stare. This was not a moment of panic. It was a month-long orchestration of murder. The betrayal of blood is among the most severe breaches of human trust. She sentenced him to 26 years without possibility of parole. Brandon's face remained expressionless until he turned and saw Lena with the children in the gallery. His hands trembled then, but no one stepped forward for him. Not his friends, not his business associates, and not me. The following day, I watched the news coverage of his prison transfer. His assets were seized under federal forfeiture, his offshore accounts frozen. Lena filed for full custody of the children and won immediately. No contest. He's in San Quentin, Senator Montgomery informed me over lunch a week later. Not minimum security. The Bureau of Prisons takes attempted filicide very seriously. My survivor testimony became part of a PBS documentary on elder abuse and financial betrayal. Senior advocacy groups invited me to speak at conferences. I declined most, but accepted a few where I thought my story might prevent someone else from becoming a victim. Montgomery's foundation provided me with a modest coastal property. Not charity, he insisted, but reparation for a system that nearly failed you. I volunteered 3 days a week with the California Marine Rescue Coalition, training others in survival preparedness. The ocean that nearly claimed my life became the centerpiece of my new one. Monthly, I hosted talks titled, "Don't Die Quietly: How to Stay Alive When Betrayed." Not just about physical survival, but emotional resilience. Each night I worked on my memoir, tentatively titled 13 Miles, the distance between death and rebirth. Lena brought the grandchildren to visit regularly. At first, they were shy, uncertain around this stranger their father had tried to erase. But children adapt. Soon, Maddie was asking me to teach her how to tie fishing knots, and Thomas was helping me tend the small vegetable garden I'd planted. "Will Dad ever come back?" Maddie asked me once as we sat on the deck, watching pelicans dive into the surf. "I don't know," I answered honestly, "but you don't need to worry about that now." I revised my will, splitting my remaining assets between the Grandchildren's Education Fund and the Marine Rescue Coalition. In my desk drawer, I kept a sealed envelope marked, "For Brandon, if you change." I didn't know if I'd ever send it. Some wounds take longer than a lifetime to heal. 6 months after the trial, Cliff Montgomery invited me back aboard the Orion. We fished together off the coast, peacefully this time. I hooked a large halibut, admired it briefly, then released it back into the depths. "You're still the calm in the storm," Cliff observed. I watched the water close over where the fish had disappeared. "I survived the storm," I replied. "Now I am the tide." A letter arrived from Brandon 3 weeks later, handwritten, pages long, filled with apologies and explanations. I read it once, absorbing every word, every excuse, every plea. Then I burned it in the fireplace. Some messages deserve no response. Some betrayals permit no forgiveness. Not yet. Perhaps not ever. Each night before sleep, I take Emily's photo from my wallet and kiss it gently. "I kept my promise," I whisper. I didn't give up. Today, I stand alone on the bluff behind my house, watching the sun sink behind the Pacific. The same ocean that cradled me while I fought to live now offers me peace in its vast beauty. In the distance, the wind howls like waves against a hull. I didn't come back for revenge, I say to myself, tasting the salt in the air. I came back for truth. Revenge just happened to be the path. I turn and walk back toward the house, strong, alone, free. The tide is coming in. And tomorrow waits beyond the horizon. Not all storms come to disrupt our lives. Some come to clear our path.